Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier presentation that you've gotten from me than last time, but that's all right. The first thing I want you to do is answer this question on a separate sheet of paper because I'm going to have one assignment for you during this presentation for alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. The first one is alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs a problem among teens? What I want you to do is first write your guess, yes or no, give an answer why, and then what I want you to do is see if you can find data. You should be able to find something through the CDC on a statistic for Muskegon County teens for alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. I also want you to find the state of Michigan and see how our Muskegon area compares to the state of Michigan when it comes to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. It would be 5 points for your Michigan data and 5 points for your uh, Muskegon data, and then you won't get any credit if you don't list your resources. So again, give me, oh, and then you'll get points for your response initially to do teens have a problem with alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs? All right. The next thing I want you to do on this assignment sheet is, because we're in the alcohol, tobacco, and other drug unit, I want you to go through your 7 health skills, and I want you to list out why or how you can use each of these skills when it comes to handling or dealing with ATOD issues, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs. Um, Go through each one. I'm going to go into detail in the notes about your goal setting, but we're actually going to talk more about these separately, independently, without notes in class. So on Monday, I want you to hand in your input on how each of these 7 skills can be used within the ATOD unit. That will be your homework. Now the rest of the time I'm going to go through some notes, take some time to research, and I may or may not give you another assignment. Okay. The next thing, like I said, we are going to discuss is a little bit about the decision-making process. This first diagram kind of shows you the understanding of decision-making. So it comes down to you ultimately at the end whether or not you are going to do something such as drink or smoke or take a prescription pill, etc. But what comes into play is that influence. So if we have a family history of drug use, that really influences our decision on whether or not we're going to say yes or no. If my friends don't do drugs, that can influence me yes or no. If I deal with a family member who drinks all the time, that might influence me positively or negatively. And we'll go, as we go throughout this section, we'll notice that those influences help make a decision, but again, it comes down to what decision you want to make, no matter what those others are. When it comes to problem solving, again, we're in this goal setting aspect of the 7 skills. We want to state the problem and what you want to happen. Create a list of how to solve the problem and reach your goal. Think about advantages and disadvantages. Pick the best way to solve it and make it happen. We've seen this before. You can apply it in many different ways. I'll explain the check it out thing in a minute. But really what it comes down to is we should have this decision made before we go out. You go to a party. If drugs are introduced into that scenario, what do you want to happen? And you should know this answer beforehand. If drugs are going to come, are you going to stay there? Are you going to report anybody? Are you going to prevent drinking and driving? Are you going to partake? And it's easier to know your decision beforehand so that you can stick with that. And that's where this create problems, research, advantages, disadvantages, etc. come into play. The check it out is really that internal versus external influence aspect that we've seen. So does it follow personal and family values? And for each and every single one of us, that differs. What will family think? And is it the right thing to do? Will this idea help me stay safe and healthy? Well, obviously, we're in the ATOD unit. All these decisions, unless it's a prescription drug from your doctor, not somebody else's, chances are it's not going to help improve health. It's not going to keep you safe. And so the answer should ultimately be no. We talk about abstinence. We want to abstain from alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Does this idea follow family, school, and community rules? So are you proud of what you're doing? Are you proud of the decision you made? Can you do something within the school system? Is it acceptable? Your community, whether it's your church community, whether it's your family, whether it's a sport community, will any of those agree with your decision? Does it show respect for yourself, including your body, and for others? When people are drunk, they don't make the best decisions. They disrespect themselves and they can disrespect others. Those aren't decisions that we control after we're under an influence of a substance. And could this really work? Is it realistic? To say no to drugs obviously is realistic. Saying yes to particular ones we're looking at, of course you can say yes, but is it going to help you achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's a school goal, a job goal, a relationship goal? All of those come to play when drugs are involved because it affects more than just you. We talked about this, and some of you should have this in your notes already, but when we're managing these risky situations, we have to know how to get out of them. And even if this is a skill we learned in middle school, it's always good to reintroduce it because it's a valuable skill. The most obvious is to say no directly. Don't hem and haw about it. Don't say maybes. I'm not sure's. Just say no. When someone offers you, don't make a big deal about it. No, no thanks, not interested, and be done with it. Say the same phrase over and over again. Now, when I practice skills with the middle schoolers, this one personally drives me crazy, and it works effectively because of that. But again, going in a realistic scenario, are you going to repeat yourself 10 times to someone? Obviously, they should get the point before that, but is this something that you would do? Next is suggest another activity. Again, the idea on here isn't always the best, and it takes skills sometimes to be able to go, hey, yeah, no, I don't want to drink, but I really want to go driving around and see the sunset. Again, that's a horrible idea. I'm on the spot here. But it's getting that off topic and to get you out of that scenario to make you more comfortable. Next one's give a reason. Always saying health can be a good one unless people know you don't respect your health. Another one that we kind of want to try to stay away from is maybe saying our parents, because obviously nobody's parents would want their children doing drugs. So it's one that can shoot right back at them. And really this is probably one of my least favorites, just because when someone gives a reason, we find a way to make their reason invalid. There's not many things that we can say that people won't go, well, but, and kind of contradict what you just said. So out of all these, this one is probably one of those that can work, but be prepared to have to continue to reinforce your reason. And the last one's walk away. The way I try to look at this and the way I want you to hopefully think about it is if someone's offering you something and you say no the first time around, in a real world situation, you should just say, okay, no problem, and the scenario should be over with. Realistically, we pressure our friends on a regular basis. Peer pressure is common. It happens as we're adults. It happened when we're in elementary school. That's never going to change. So it gets to that point when your friend or this person is no longer respecting you. And so your best option really is to walk away from the scenario. They don't necessarily deserve a reason why. You can leave just because that's your right. All right, so the big one here, or the next section we're going to get into, is what encourages and discourages drug use. So when we say what encourages drug use, this is what is more likely to cause you to use drugs. So being raised in a dysfunctional family is one. Now, this doesn't mean that if your family is dysfunctional, you will use drugs. A lot of people with families that are a little crazy, they give us a reason to not use drugs. I mean, if you ever were raised by an alcoholic, you know what it looks like, and that can be a reason to never touch alcohol. Or that's your reason to touch alcohol is because that's how they coped with it. So these can all go both ways. It doesn't mean you will. You could check every single one of these and not have any problems with drugs or ever be tempted to do them. Next one is negative self-esteem. Obviously, if I don't like myself, I'm going to value my opinion or others' opinions more than my own. So no matter what I kind of think, that little voice in my head goes, no, I really shouldn't smoke cigarettes. Everybody else is doing it, and I think they're more influential, they're more popular, they're prettier, they're stronger, they're whatever. I'm going to do what the crowd does because I want to belong. And that goes into the next point of unable to resist peer pressure. So if I can't get away from that peer pressure, I can't say no, I can't walk away, I don't like myself, then, this is going to be something that you'll have to deal with and hopefully choose the right path. Drug abuse in your family history. So there's some studies that show that if there's an addict in your family, you're more likely to be an addict. You have more addictive personality. Doesn't mean that you will. It just increases your chances. Again, it's also that environmental cause. If I see parents who use drugs to deal with their life, I'm more likely to use drugs to deal with my life because that's what I know is the norm. Or, like I mentioned in the first one, I see it and I don't want to do it because I've seen it. Suffering from depression, we're looking at anything to take the pain away. So anything to numb it, to forget, to escape. All those are helping me to not deal with the depression. Reality, most drugs, after you're off the high, after the drunkenness, after the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it actually increases the severity of your depression. So doing drugs makes depression worse in the long run. The next two I always find really interesting because we've got two polar opposites. One, excessive pressure to succeed. So this is the person that has everything on their plate. Every minute of their day is planned. And so they end up having a higher risk of drug use because of that. Their drugs are something they turn into help them get through their day, whether they take an upper so they have the energy to go and a downer to fall asleep, and then they take something to forget about everything just for a little while, and then go on with the next day. You see that as a way to kind of deal with life because life's too full of everything else. The opposite is difficulty achieving in school. Again, we're looking at I'm not as good as anything. I can't achieve success in something that everybody else seems to achieve success in. And so we find reasons to do drugs. It doesn't matter anymore. So, this is fun. This feels good. Why not? And so both of them can kind of cause you to be more likely. Again, this isn't, yes, you will do drugs if you have every issue on here. It's just an encouraging factor. The next one's what's discouraging. So we're going to talk about the opposites. Next one, raised in a loving and functional family. So knowing you have your family's support, knowing your family's views and opinions and what they think that you can do, and even the idea of knowing what you can do. If you've ever heard of self-efficacy, this concept of I know I can do something and I can be successful comes from that loving family. Um, Again, just because you come from a loving family doesn't mean that you aren't going to do drugs. So just the opposite with the encourages, just the discourage. You're less likely to. Involvement in school activities. So not being so busy, but actually taking roles and responsibilities within school help us stay away from drugs. Positive self-esteem, and this one just goes to the point that, yes, I believe that this is something I don't want to do. I don't want to harm my body. I don't want to take the chances. And no matter what my friends say or the peer pressure that comes my way, I'm going to stick with what I believe in. Define goals and plans to reach them. Obviously, if I have plans, ATOD is something that isn't going to make me more successful. It's going to cause setbacks, especially with regular use, whether it's suspension, expulsion, being kicked out of clubs, all of those can play a role with regular drug use. So when we have those defined plans and goals, we're more likely to be successful because we want to reach them. The next one's probably one of the strongest is having friends who do not use drugs. So having that peer social support of people who have the same morals and values of you and ideals about drug use make it easier for you. You don't have that pressure. You don't have that bias coming from other places. And then the last one's having a plan to cope for stress. So that we see with that excessive pressure to succeed on the previous slide, this one's the opposite. So I know when I get stressed, I need to go for a walk. I know when I need to get stressed, I need to talk to someone about it. When I get stressed, I need to go listen to my favorite song. Versus I get so stressed that I'm going to go and just get high so I can forget about it and not deal with it right now. So this one is having those little safeties in place that when life gets too much, I can figure out that way to unwind that doesn't take a substance. All right. Um, what I'm actually going to have you do, and I said I might add to your assignments, and this one should be a little bit more fun. I want you to write down the names of your top 2 movies, top 2 songs, and if those of you who play video games, I also want you to add a video game or two to that list. Um, oh, and if you don't do video games, do a TV show. So top 2 songs, top 2 movies, and either, oh my goodness, I'm screwing this up for you guys. Sorry. 2 songs, yeah, 2 movies, either 2 TV shows or 2 video games. All right. What I want you to do is I want you to write those down. And then for the songs, I want you to look up the lyrics. And then for the movies, find a synopsis. Video games do the same. TV show do the same. And what I want you to write about each one of those is whether it encourages or discourages drug use. Okay? My example would be for a TV show. I like Grey's Anatomy. But when they have a problem, their problem is to go and get drunk. Or their solution is to go and get drunk. So for me, that TV show could be a way to encourage excessive drinking when it comes to dealing with stress. A song that I really like, let's see, a song that's popular, not that I like, but we'll get the point across, would be like Red Solo Cup. Many of you know that song, right? That song encourages drinking excessively in order to have fun. So that's the message of that song. I want you to do the same for your 2 songs, your 2 movies, and either 2 TV shows or 2 video games. And add that to your 7 health skills and your 2 stats and your 1 question from earlier in this PowerPoint. After you have that done, you can move on with this presentation. The last thing we're going to cover is just quite briefly, I want you to summarize this, but I don't need you to memorize it. It's something just to be aware of. When it comes to drug using, there's certain drugs that fall straight into stage 3. Others are 1 and 2, and we'll get into the detail this time. When it comes to stage 1, we're looking at, are we taking a medication to cope with physical pain? And this one can be a prescription. That's where I like to put this one. So a prescription pill stays at the stage 1 experimentation, except for if I'm taking it for a therapeutic amount that causes me to not be able to drive, for example. Also, curiosity is in this one, but curiosity doesn't have to be met. So just because someone thinks, I really want to know what it's like to get high, doesn't mean that you have to do it. So there's a healthy level of curiosity, and then there's the unhealthy where you experiment with everything. But you'll notice that once we get into the actual taking of a drug, many of the illegal drugs skip stage 1 and 2. Being able to cope with the problem is never a way to use drugs. We're looking at social emotional issues, and then falling into peer pressure, again, is not a reason to do drugs. Now, drugs that fit into this category, again, I said prescription, cigarettes/other nicotine tobacco products can fit into this category, and so can alcohol. You think about many middle school kids have told me or raise their hand, yes, I've had a sip of my parents' wine cooler, or I've tasted beer and it was gross. That's a curiosity level that doesn't have any necessarily physical harm or negative consequences, except for the fact that maybe you did it without your parents' consent and they got upset with you. And drinking underage is illegal. The next one is social regular use. And so you can be at the stage, again, your prescription pills shouldn't necessarily be in this stage unless it's for a medical treatment. And then alcohol and tobacco can be. Alcohol is iffy though. Notice I haven't talked about marijuana quite yet. But people can stay here for the rest of their lives. But the big one on here that I really want to point out is the second bullet point. Does not feel the need to abuse the drug for its effect. I could have a glass of wine to toast at a wedding, to count down, New Year's, and never have to have the side effect of getting drunk. Now, once I get drunk, I move into stage 3, which is risky use. Now, it's okay for parents to come home and have a glass of wine or have a beer or a drink after a day of work. Now, if they're doing it always because they're stressed, that's a little bit different. But if they're doing it because they truly enjoy the taste of a glass of wine like someone enjoys the taste of Mountain Dew, then we're looking at that regular social use, again, as long as it's legally allowed. But that big one, like I said, is not needing to feel its effects. And then it doesn't put ourselves at risk, which is the next stage. The second we use a drug and it causes an altered perception of reality, whether it's something from being dizzy to seeing everything is blurry to my mind is seeing something like your psychedelic drugs where I feel like the walls are melting, all of them go into stage 3, the risky use. So it means that when I'm using it, the drug has altered my perception so much so that driving becomes dangerous. I'm more likely to possibly get in fights. Swimming can lead to drowning. You have unplanned sexual behavior, which can lead to STIs and pregnancy. And then the risk of using other drugs. So maybe you only ever used alcohol, but now that you're drunk, you've also used another drug while intoxicated because you lack that ability to make a good decision at this point. The next one's dependence, and this one is repeated use of ATOD that leads to failure to fulfill major responsibilities related to the following, and also puts one in risky situations. So this one is, I'm starting to screw up because of a drug, and I don't see a problem with it, and I continue to do it. Now, this can lead to the last stage, which is addiction, or you could stay here, but you're looking at you got an MIP, and then you got another MIP, and you lost your driver's license, which caused you to lose your job, but then you continue to drink. You continue to show up for certain events, or you forget to do something because of the drug. That's considered dependence. And so having a drug, getting it for its negative side effects, and then having it cause problems within your life is considered a dependence for that drug. Any drug can be this way. People have dependence for prescription pills that weren't prescribed to them or that were. You can see this with marijuana, alcohol, nicotine, not so much, just because we don't see the negative consequences or risky use. We don't really hear too many people drowning because they had a tobacco cigarette. But this, you're looking at mostly your illegal drugs plus alcohol. Your last stage then is addiction. This is a medical condition, which means that at this point you've used the drug to the extent that you no longer, your body has changed. You physiologically have changed your body to only function with this drug. And as you see, it says serious psychological and physical changes. So whether it is a social need, whether it's a psychological need, whether it's a physiological need, your body has to have this drug in order to function properly. You'll notice that if someone's an alcoholic, they have to drink pretty early in the morning, or else they start going through detox, which means their body without the drug starts trying to kind of heal itself. But in the extreme, alcohol is a depressant. So when someone goes through detox, that depressant that is no longer in their system, it goes to the other extreme because the body's been used to that depressant, that it goes too high. And alcohol is the most dangerous drug to actually withdraw from because it can cause seizures, heart failure, and death. Other drugs can lead to pretty severe detox symptoms, but alcohol is actually the most dangerous. If left untreated, it really just becomes medical conditions, cancers, and eventually death. So addiction is not something easy to treat. It is something that someone will always, the rest of their life, even when they're not using the drug, deal with. But it's something that we have to worry about for other people. So when you look at these 5 stages of drug use, realize that all illegal drugs, and then including alcohol, can go right to stage 3 if we're looking for those negative consequences or what people perceive as positive side effects or the reason they use that drug. Stage 1 and stage 2, that curiosity stage and that regular social stage, is only there if it's a prescription drug or we're looking at not needing the desired side effects. The last thing, signs of blackout, which you could, or addiction, or things that you can see. Increased tolerance, a higher need for the drug. Blackouts, so being under the influence of a drug, having no recollection of being under the influence, but still being conscious and people telling you about it. That's not healthy. It's not something that happens to the general population, and it is a sign of a problem. Denial, so the fact that you won't admit that you probably have at least a dependence issue. Personality changes, because really what becomes important is that drug and that drug-seeking behavior, uncontrolled drug use, and then other indications such as sneaking the drug, using it earlier in the morning, using it alone, etc. What to do? So whether it's you or somebody else, if people have told you, you probably need to talk to somebody else about it. Check for legal debt. If you've lost responsibilities or you suffer from depression, you need to get help. We've seen this in other units, such as like suicide. Talk to a trusted a doctor, someone within a hospital setting, a teacher or a counselor. But really, we're looking at services. So once you try to seek treatment, there's inpatient and outpatient therapy. So depending on the severity of the addiction or the dependence, one of these two might be a better option. If that is not something that interests you, you don't think you go or need that, try a group therapy, AA and NA. They're available within Muskegon. They're easily searchable. One's Alcoholics Anonymous, the other one's Narcotics Anonymous. And with both of those, you talk to people who have those issues. And if you don't think you have the issues, go to a meeting, listen to people tell their stories. And if you can relate, then you might have to ask yourself some more questions. Some addictions can be treated by medications, but they're not a solve, because addiction is more than just that physical need. It's also a psychological need, because there's something else going on that brought you to that point. Counseling is almost always necessary to deal with addiction. To look for answers and to talk to someone to get quick answers, websites and hotlines are available. But for serious help, we're looking at those top 4 are really good options. So the next thing that we'll probably go through in class is actually work on our refusal skills and go how the 7 health skills can help us to become successful help us become successful when we're trying to abstain from alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. Make sure you have those assignments in. They are due Monday unless the sub leaves me notes otherwise, and have a good day.